around how to reach new folks and inspire them despite the noise and chaos of election season. Yeah, that's a big one on people's minds. So I agree. We'll get into that. All right, well, let's kick it off. No big deal to tackle yet. No big deal at all. Just a slight minor thing. Let's start with introductions real quick and just, before we get into the questions and the discussion, like, Kristina, tell us a little bit more about you and your background and, what you're about and what you've been doing.
Oh, thanks so much. Thank you, all of you, for taking time, coming in a little early from the West Coast. So I'm Kristina Villiarini. I work at the Alliance for Safety and Justice, which is a national criminal justice reform nonprofit. And we are trying to reduce mass incarceration and create more policies around the country that are focused on what safety actually means. So this idea of safety and sort of turning that on its head, right? What does shared safety mean? Do we all have a responsibility for our own safety? And we empower folks who have experienced past convictions or have a criminal record, or folks who have survived a violent crime or survived a traumatic experience. And we try to help them heal and put them in touch with resources that allow them to go on their journey and demand policies that actually impact them. So it's just really, really rewarding work. I was previously at Lambda Legal. I was their first digital director. This has kind of become the sort of trope of my career. I'm the person that nonprofits call when they try to figure out how to build this stuff and they don't really know where to start. So it's just been a really tremendous honor to be able to do this work. So yeah, like a lot of folks have followed me either because they saw one of my crazy talks, this promises to be no different, or they, followed me when I was a journalist, or they followed me when I was doing digital marketing as an entrepreneur in the early 2000s. I was doing e-com work back when it was not fun and not sexy. So I've been in this a long time, and I'm so excited that we got to meet and talk, because I know you've been in this a long time, and you equally have fans for your sort of no-nonsense banter. So I'm excited about this one.
Yeah, me too. It's funny. I mean, I started back in nonprofit technology and marketing, like specifically in 2007. And, honestly, I think probably kind of like you have just gotten my hands dirty and tried a lot of different things over the years, and have had the opportunity to work with a lot of different types of organizations, a lot of different size organizations, like trying to figure out what is the best approach for their organization and their supporters based on, what their vision and what their goals are, and looking really to like scale those online programs. And I think now, and in the digital world, I think you and I have been sitting in here for a long time in this space, and now everyone's like, well, we got to do digital. So there's a lot of organizations that are trying to figure out, maybe they've done really successful acquisition in the past, and now they have to translate some things into this digital world. And, events are gone right now, and just all of these things, like how do you do that? And so I think that's what, we're trying to figure out together sometimes right now in this world, because it is different and it is noisy. So let's get into it. Let's get into the real talk. I agree. Real talk. First off, Kristina, tell me your perspective on this. Why is it so hard to grow your supporter base?
Yeah, so I think you hit it on the head. There's so much noise. I tell my teams we're in the attention game. And it is like, I don't think about the attention game in any specific way. Like, we're in the attention game in the nonprofit category. We're in the attention game. We are competing with all the social media, all of grandma's texts, all of the emails, all of the Zoom calls, kids working from home too, you're working from home. So I think for me, I think a lot of folks sort of lead with the ask too often. Right? They say, hey, this is what we do. We save the whales. Don't you think that's important? Give us money. And instead of sort of leading with, climate change is killing whales. Whales are ingesting more plastic than they ever have in their life. the more that we're staying at home, the more we're consuming products, the more we're dumping things into trash cans that end up in the ocean, right? There's all of these factors that you sort of lead with that make people feel like, oh shit, I'm a part of this too, right? Like, how do I help play this out in a different way? And I think, I say this a lot, but I think too often for progressive causes, we want to debate on these issues of like, we're on the right side of history, when in fact we really should be debating about, like, is this important? Do we think that this is going to make the world a better place? And how do we communicate that in a way that's not like, you know, master's degree or PhD level, and really get to people at their kitchen tables at the heart of the things that they're really think are important to them.
Yeah, yeah. Real quick, we did get one person chat in to say that your volume's a little low. Maybe you can tap it up a tiny bit.
Yeah,
on your
no problem.
computer.
Is that better?
There you go. That's better. That's better.
Sweet.
Let us know, John, if that's better for you too. Yeah, I mean, I'll echo what you have said and add in a couple of other thoughts and nuggets. I do think that leading with the ask is often what happens, and that it's hard to get through the attention, and then like to get the attention, get through the noise if that's all you're ever doing. I like to kind of talk about if you're a Gary Vee fan, you kind of either are or you're not, if you're familiar with him. But the jab, jab, hook, it's like, give value, give information, and like before you do the hook and make the ask. I think that's a lot of what makes acquisition hard. And we called this webinar Quick to Launch, supporter acquisition tactics. Not easy to launch. It's not easy necessarily to figure out how to tell your story in the right way that connects with the right people at the right time, but really thinking more about getting that right message that's more about how they're a part of it. Like getting your messaging right, I think, is one of the biggest factors in growing and in doing acquisition to cut through the noise, right? Is like making it a little bit less about like, this is what we're doing and this is why we need your money, and more about, this is how all of this affects us and you're a part of that. And here are all these ways in which we're trying to help holistically make the world a better place about these issues, and how you're involved and how you can be a part of it too. So I think oftentimes it's just like changing the language, and how we talk about our supporters and them being involved with us,
Yeah, I think that's right. I also think this is also an indication of like whether or not you know who your supporters are, right? Because if you know, if you've kind of done the work, which is also hard, to get a little bit more of an indication of how they got to you and why. Did they get it through a partner email? Did they get it through an event? You're going to have to pivot in this climate to figure out, how do I keep these folks engaged, right? And you're going to have to incentivize them. So I see Hope's comment about, difficult and like trauma-informed messaging, but I think you're also talking about something that's particularly evergreen, right? So, like I'm going to, we're talking about tactics, so I'm going to try and jump in with as much actionable stuff that people can take away as possible. Usually things that don't cost money, because a lot of nonprofits don't have any. But like, maybe it's setting up a Facebook event for your supporters that just like, that's once a month. That's like, review all of your documentation, right? Review your will, review your sort of like, have I spoken to my friends and family about, who's going to be my power of attorney? Maybe it's just like providing something that's of value that has nothing to do with like, give us money, support our message, come to our event, is really just like, this is a thing that we care about and it's important to you.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a lot about the value. So let's move into the next point. And I'm glad that you mentioned you kind of already posed this question, like, do you even know who your supporters are? And I also like that you added in a tactic that's free that anybody can do And that's around building communities that people can get involved in and get engaged in, where you can bring them helpful resources. Because I agree, I think if you build community and you get people engaged in something that's not necessarily about the ask, I think it's more of a long game. And I know that that's hard because oftentimes we're like, but we need money now, right? But I think when you think about supporter acquisition on the whole, you got to be thinking about it from a sustainability mindset instead, you know, and like getting people engaged in the right way for the long haul with you.
Yeah, I agree. And I think your initial point is really important, right? Like if you are the source of information for your supporter, the money will come when the big moment that they can connect the dots and they're positioned to do that, right? Like, you know, at Lambda, when Donald Trump got elected, a bunch of people were like, oh my God, what's going to happen to gay people, and flooded Lambda with donations and a bunch of new subscribers. And ultimately it was just like, here's an organization that we believe could protect us when this fight goes down in the courts. And, you know, over my time there, we saw that dozens and dozens of times where it's like, litigation takes a long time. And most of the time we were just trying to keep people sort of engaged in between the happenings of each court case. And because we were providing value in other ways, when big moments finally happened, people gave us money, right? Because it wasn't just, hey, we're hitting you up for money now. It's like, we've been informing you of how serious this is and why this is significant and why this is going to impact your community. In order for us to fight back, we need money, we need to keep the lights on. But, you know, also understanding that there's a segment of your population that's never going to give you money, but that doesn't, you know, exclude them from being a super user because they open every email, they forward it to their family, they click on every link, you know, like that person is also somebody you have to figure out how to engage.
Yeah, exactly. I think like those are the sneezers. So Seth Godin refers to those people like as the sneezers, like the ones who like they get the information, they sneeze it out. And, like,
I love your
Seth
Godin references because I interned with Seth and I have like a deep love for him. Spent 3 days in his office in Hudson Valley, and just one of the smartest people and the nicest people I've ever met. So keep going with the Seth Godin references, +1 all the way.
All right, I'll bring that up a lot. Okay, so let's get tactical about how do you know your supporters and who are they and how do you understand their motivations better? Because I think sometimes this question about data and really trying to like, oh, we got a lot of data from a lot of different sources now because you said do this Facebook thing. Well, now I don't know, how do I even like really understand who they are versus who's in my CRM versus who's on my email list? Like, what have you found to work in terms of knowing who they are?
Yeah, I mean, so for me, one sort of secret tactic is lapsed constituents. That population is really interesting to me. Like these are people who could have unsubscribed but didn't. They're maybe still opening, but they're not as actively participating. And like, what is the ways that in which we can incentivize them to come back into the fold? So for us, like Surveymonkey is your friend, right? You want to talk about like, we're going to put together a 5 to 7 question sort of, you know, we just want to know more about what's important to you, why you stayed on the list, why you've stayed with us, where you get your other information. Do you know of other, you know, let's say in my example, criminal justice organizations doing this work? How can, you know, and how can you incentivize that person to actually participate in this? You know, I'll use the Lambda example. We randomly gave away a $25 Amazon gift cards. Like, so we did like a raffle. But in other organizations where you don't have a budget, maybe you invite this person to a lunch and learn. Maybe you invite them to you know, specific town hall with staff, you know, or like, you know, they get to jump on a call with your ED for 15 minutes. Something that's very, very low cost, but like a very high touch sort of thing. that gets people engaged and makes this person feel like, oh, they actually do care about what I think. They do want to hear from me. And those are the types of things that you can do to sort of see at least how a small percentage of your population is feeling. And I guarantee you a larger percentage of your active population is feeling, but maybe they're more connected for a different reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And I'll add that. So I was trying to get there was a Q&A question that came in. I was trying to get it pulled up. And we'll take a look at that. I'll add that I think surveys need to be focused on the fact that you're trying to cut through a lot of noise. So don't make it 30 questions long.
Yeah,
you know,
5 to
like
7 max.
Simple, yeah, like a real short survey that's really pointed around their motivations to interaction with you, and yeah, what they want, and gather that data and make it easy. You mentioned Surveymonkey. You can do a Google form. Again, these are all things that are free. And if you're really just looking at one way to get started, it's like, we'll start with your email list, and your database, and yeah, look at those people. I also think that, there are a lot of new interesting tools on the market too now that make a lot of this easier. So like, if you want to get super jazzy, like you can, there are a lot of different analytic solutions available now that make this easier. I won't get into all of those, but the data is there. I think it's finding the right way to make sense of it and understanding why supporters are actually engaged with you, which is asking them the question. All right, so I'm trying to figure out why my questions box won't show me. Yes, you can have the webinar sent when it's over. We are going to be sending it out. Give me 1 second, because there was a Q&A that came in while you were talking about data, and I think this is an important one. All right, how can our nonprofit meet new donors? So I think we're going to get into this as we start to talk about a few more of like the tactical things about like different platforms and ways in which you can look at growth and acquisition and find new people. So let's, that actually takes us into our next question, honestly. Like, what are the best platforms to use to bring more people to the party, to make new friends, to meet new donors? I've got some thoughts on this. Kristina, what have you found to work for your organization and previous organizations you've been with?
Yeah, this is probably going to be really disappointing to some folks, but like it's the oldies but goodies, right? It is your blog, it is your video, it is your social media platforms, it is your SMS. I think for organizations that have an active CRM or a more sort of sophisticated CRM, like go to a donor or like different kinds of grant writer folks and say, hey, can we get somebody to underwrite like us taking on SMS or some of the other things, right? And like some of these features are so critical for communicating with your donors and making it easier, right? Like SMS right now, like text is what email was 10 years ago. Like the open rates, the stuff that we're seeing, the ability to have a conversation, the ability to share, like it's so easy for me to forward a message to somebody. It feels like if you design a really strong conversation, it feels very sort of personable. It doesn't feel automated at all. Shout out to Montserrat, who I think is not on this call, who's on my team and who's taken, like, she's been with us for like 2 months and has taken our SMS from like 0 to 100 real quick. So, it's just, I think the platforms are where people are, right? Like the ones that they are already on and the things that they feel comfortable using already. It's very, very difficult to be first, especially as an organization. And so this sort of relates to the question as far as like, where are new donors, right? Well, new donors are the same place they've always been, right? They're hanging out with other donors. So you have to go where those folks are, right? Like they're all at the same party. You just have to have a better favor or a better story to tell. But, you know, I think the data from Blackbaud was something like the average nonprofit donor gives, and this is like not even institutional, this is just like the average person with a little bit of extra change to donate to causes, gives in a year to like 20 plus organizations. So, you know, whether it's $5, $2, $10, when that ask comes and they've got a little bit of change in their pocket, they feel compelled to give. So there's not necessarily like this idea of like brand loyalty as much as it is like, this is a thing that I care about and the timing is right. So how are you communicating with those folks? How are you bringing value? Are you exhausting all of your resources? And for a lot of organizations, it might be capacity, right? Like it's me and someone else. And how are we supposed to run Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and advertising and email and SMS? So it's a capacity challenge, right? I've always been kind of a stickler for like, go where you are most effective. But in this game where there's so much audience in so many different places, you kind of have to be able to pivot your message to fit the platform, right? It has to be platform specific. Like you can't just write a bunch of like stories on your notes app and post them on Instagram and expect to get money. Like that's not going to work. So there has to be a more comprehensive strategy, and you have to be willing to do the work. So it's like, yes, Taylor and I are going to give you tactics and give you value, but you have to like actually be able to execute on a high level and consistently.
Yeah, yeah. And I would say on that topic of execution, you know, don't try to chew off all of the things all at once. You know, like try to get good if your audience isn't on Facebook, because that's where a lot of people are already. Just try to get good at that first. Maybe parlay that into the Instagram game. And I think look for different ways to just evolve your message from one platform into another. So like evolve a Facebook long form post into a series of, you know, little snippets that become an Instagram story or something like that.
Right. Or the company
also,
newsletter, you know, or the email or
yeah,
the blog, right? You know, you have a tool a little bit later about turning blogs into videos. So it's like thinking about what are the hacks for this content.
Exactly. Exactly. It's all about it really is about a lot of hacks where it's like you have one big piece of body of work, you know, like maybe like your blog or your newsletter or your impact report. How do you take that and snip it up into 100 pieces of content of essentially the same thing that you're now able to like drip out over time on these different platforms? I think that's important. I also think when you think about, you mentioned a lot of, you know, maybe like donors that are like, okay, I got a little bit of extra change right now and this thing came in front of me and I'm inspired right now. One of the things that's interesting about this year that I'm seeing so far in data reports is that there are more donors now that are giving the $25 gifts, right? And that's, I think, because people care, they want to give, the economy's not good. So you're getting more people that are giving in these smaller amounts. And I think that's something that's interesting to sort of lean into when you're thinking about acquiring new donors right now, is can you try to go after the, hey, we're going to ask people for $10 on Facebook through Facebook ads or something like that, as opposed to like trying to get these major gifts, but we're just going to try to get a lot of $10 gifts on Facebook, you know? So that's, I think, maybe a different way to think about it in this moment in time.
And like changing your like Facebook sort of CTA into a donate now button, right? You're not going to get a ton of donor information from Facebook. That's not their game, you know, like they're playing a different game than nonprofits are, but you will get donations that you're not paying a fee for C3s and C4s. So, you know, and like Facebook fundraisers are like low key, one of the best ways to activate folks around like giving at their level, right? And to activate their timeline. it's an incredible brand boosting and visibility opportunity, in that like maybe folks aren't sharing your post, but if they actually really care about the messaging, they might be able to say, hey, for my birthday, would you want to give $150? And, you know, if the average person has 200 friends on Facebook, that's an attainable goal. And that's, you know, no fee money that goes straight into the nonprofit's bank account every day. So Facebook fundraising tools for nonprofits, you know, there's a lot of challenges with Facebook and the ethics of it and all of that and the tension, but that's still a billion people that are right in front of you. So, you know, when we talk about like the best platforms to use to bring more people to the party, it's not necessarily the most ethical or the ones that align most with your values and your mission. It's just the ones that are going to accomplish the particular goal.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad that you said that. And there's one platform that I'll bring up that I think is really underutilized, and you can think about using it. But on that note, I just the last 2 nights, my husband and I were watching The Social Dilemma, that documentary on Netflix, and I was just like so creeped out. And I'm like, what do I do? My whole job is about helping organizations raise money on social media platforms and things like that. Like, that's a big part of what I do. And now I feel really icky about this. And like, I was already kind of getting that icky factor, you know, and I'll just say something that he said to me this morning. He was like, you know, there's the good and the bad, but if what you're doing and what organizations you're working with are doing is to spread the positive things on that platform, then be a force for good, be a part of changing it into a positive space. So that's just one thing I'll add in on that, is maybe some of us have seen that recently or are feeling icky about it or whatever. The one other platform I want to mention that I just think is underutilized by nonprofit organizations for acquisition and for bringing value is LinkedIn. Think about your influential board members who maybe have an influential network on LinkedIn. Arm them with good, valuable information that they can share about the work that your organization is doing that maybe does bring light to your cause and to your issue on that professional network. I think that is something that I just don't see happening a lot, but I think could be really effective. And I'm curious, Kristina, if you've, you know,
I kill
done much of that yourself.
I kill it on LinkedIn. It's so crazy. It's like a completely different audience than on any of my other channels. Mm-hmm. And, you know, LinkedIn brought us together. So shout out to LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But the engagement is really high. People are really engaged. And interestingly enough, LinkedIn is actually really kind, right? It's still a really sort of kind network. Either because of the perception of like, I don't want future employees to see me being an asshole, or like, or more of the like, I really just want to bring value here. But I think the way that LinkedIn, I think it was an incredible acquisition for Microsoft. I think that the value that is on LinkedIn, both from its blogging and its ability to share and celebrate people directly. But I think the fact that the centerpiece was always like professional and sort of enterprise level communication and networking, it really created a really safe space for people to have conversations. And I always talk a lot about like, I try and drop different kinds of team building tips and take polls and just stay engaged in that network, because I just find the engagement really, really high.
Yeah. Yeah, I find the engagement really fruitful, you know, like actually just at a different caliber sometimes than you find on some of the other networks, where I think people who are showing up there really are more genuine, and they're not there to get into like, you know, arguments and stuff like that for the most part. Okay, so let's do a time check real quick. Okay, we're good.
Sweet.
All right. How do you get started with acquisition in the digital space that we now live in? Like, what if you're kind of new to doing more acquisition efforts in digital? Like, would you say that you've got a good tip on a starting place or a starting point?
I mean, if you're not doing email capture or like in the footer of your website or creating very clear sort of asks on your platforms with your content, I think that's a mistake. And I think it's something that can like is easily rectifiable. I think you could go to like hellobar.com and add in, you know, a widget that starts to collect email bars completely quickly and free. And like you can do that in 30 seconds, right? But if you're not collecting emails, you're not collecting like ways to communicate with folks and like be clear, right? Like a lot of people have like 6 different emails, and depending on where you will fit on their level of priorities, you'll get the email that like might be the spam trap or whatever. But what you're trying to do is start to build a rapport with people and get some sort of like clout in their life. So I think if you don't have any dollars, capturing email, like getting them to follow you on social, you know, start a Facebook group, then you start to build a little private community and asking the folks that are fired up about this issue to bring in the other people they know that are fired up about this issue. Like there's lots of ways to kind of try and start to figure out where people are, where you don't have to spend money. But if you're not like, the other thing that I'll say, and this is like, I'm thinking of this because it's the conversation that we had when we were sort of talking about this. Like if you're just starting to talk to your supporters right now, I would be shitting my pants too, because it's going to be really, really hard for you to break through. Like, sorry to be that guy, right? But the reality of the situation is we're competing with news everywhere. We're competing with misinformation. You're in a global pandemic. There's just so many variables pulling at people and so much tension in the marketplace. So like the fact that you haven't even done like a wellness check on your supporters right now, are y'all good? Like, are you struggling like I'm struggling? Like, you can, in fact, if you're dealing with hard issues, be trauma informed, right? When you have different kinds of grief that you're negotiating and different kinds of triggers that your constituents are dealing with. But you also need to realize that like, it's like a relationship that you have to put some work into, right? And if you just said hi to somebody and hit them up for money at the end of the year last year and you haven't talked to them again about anything, that's really, really bad for your relationship with that supporter.
Yeah. So what if you have been in that boat? Let's dig into that. And you got to fall on the sword and say, we screwed up. We haven't talked to these people in a long time, but we want to re-engage and we want to clean up our act and we want to get better about that. Like, what's a good way to send that email and be like, sorry, we haven't talked to you, but we want to now, you know?
I mean, you could set up 3 separate like landing pages with 3 separate URLs or like UTM codes or whatever folks are using, and like send out an email that's like, hey, we've been out of pocket for a while. These are the things, like we haven't known what to say. Can you just click really quickly and let us know where we are in your list of priorities right now? And it's like, option 1, no, I'm really fucking pissed at you. Option 2, I forgot y'all existed. And option 3, I still love y'all, but I didn't love that you didn't check in with me. And each landing page has a different message based on the link that you provided and the language. And it's like, one is maybe a full deep-throated apology. The second one is like, here's all the things that, you know, we're working on. And number 3 is like, here's our acknowledgement that we screwed up. We're so appreciative of your support. And here's what we've been working on in the pandemic that we failed to communicate. And then you sort of look at those metrics, you check out the clicks, you see how much time somebody spent on that page. And now you've got a basic sort of benchmark of like, people are really mad at us, people are lukewarm, or people are still in love and we can win them back. And then you kind of go from there and start to strategize. What are the sort of win back campaigns? What are the sort of drip campaigns to engage folks? Like, this is what you said and we heard you, and this is how we're planning to make it up to you.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think it's about like being real in this moment in time when people's walls are down right now anyways. Maybe in a past life, you might have not felt comfortable being that transparent. But I mean, let's be honest, now we're all like joining each other on Zoom calls in our bedrooms and stuff all the time. Like the walls.
Literally, y'all are all seeing my new apartment. Complete strangers, just moved in 2 weeks ago. Here you go.
I made my bed I kicked my kids out and I made my bed real quick right before this webinar started.
Yeah,
so like that's the
you're
reality.
Right. The world has changed,
be
right?
Real.
And be responsive to not the world that you wish it was, because we all are like very apologetic that we didn't value 2019, huh? But like we're looking back on it now, like we should have really appreciated you more. But like we have to, this is also something I say to my teams, we have to operate in the world we're in, work towards the one we wish it was. You have to be responsive to the world we're in.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's there was a really good question that came in from Lucy about like measurement and how do we, is Lucy on your team, I'm guessing?
Oh, Lucy, hello. Lucy and I used to work together.
Awesome. So Lucy's curious about this, like how do we measure right now with the fact that do we lower our expectations? Or like what? Do we look at like how do we, I think you mentioned this, like checking in, like how do we make sure people are just okay and, feeling supported? What do you think about measurement right now? It's weird.
Yeah, I think measurement and like analytics has always been somewhat broken. I think, there's a complete audience of people who hate in nonprofits who hate the data because they feel like it's overwhelming. But I also think that there's this sort of underlying fear of like it removes the romance from the work that we do, which is very mission driven. It's like we love our campaigns, and then this data tells us that our campaign isn't working, and we've poured our life and soul into this thing, and it just sucks, and it's gut wrenching that you spent 6 months on a project that like is just not going anywhere. But I do think that in this climate, we do have to sort of measure success in a different way, right? Yes, she's right that there are higher than ever email open rates because everybody's home and everybody's in front of their computer or in front of their phone. But yes, there is also movement fatigue. And so I think, being conscientious of like what your asks are, if you have a high volume, if you're an organization that like emails all the time, you send SMS all the time, you're sort of in the intermediate or advanced communication level, you're not like entry level by any means, then I think moderating what our asks are and mixing them in with content that's a little bit more playful and a little bit more mixed media is the way to sort of diversify that, right? Because if it's that also comes off to your point about the Gary Vee piece. If all you're doing is like write hooks, that's also contributing to the movement fatigue, to the burnout. And I think happiness is a big question, like reevaluating what happiness looks like for our users. Like, I think we know that happiness looks like not the climate that we're all existing in right now. And I think being clear about the fact that like your organization cannot solve that on its own, right? There's other factors that are contributing to that. But as far as like, what are we doing to make a user happy in the context of the work that we do? And what can we share with them that their contributions or their support has helped provide, right? Like what kind of happiness has their support helped provide for our community, for our staff? I think sometimes turning the camera inward and looking at the material that you have in your organization and the stories of people who are trying to come together every day, like those are powerful stories. And I think using them to help motivate folks who are experiencing that burnout or that fatigue is also a tactic that we should be using, right? It's not just constantly pulling for all the benchmarks, also telling the story of who we are. And the reason why we get up and get on Zoom calls for 9 hours a day now is literally because you open this email. It's literally because you answer the call when we ask for you to show up.
No. Yeah, and I think every organization has some way to relate to the context of the world right now. And I'll give you an example. We work with an organization, it's an animal welfare adoption agency, and like dog adoptions are through the roof right now because people are home and they're like, I'm lonely, I need a dog. And that's great, you know, like it's good. And they're helping to facilitate a need right now, right, for people who need companionship. And so they've been focusing on their blog and like their email engagement, and all of that is really increasing by a lot more than I think they ever expected, because people are now coming to the agency and then staying involved and tuned in to the resources that they're giving people through their blog, just free helpful information about dog ownership or whatever you need to know.
That's
right?
a great example.
To care.
That's a great example, because you think about all of the like thankless, like metricless work that like rescue agencies do, right? They drive the truck around, they, you know, have the kennels out on the street or the crates out on the street. You know, they have people sign up for their email list. Nobody ever responds. Somebody opens in, looks at pictures of puppies and kittens, but they never give any money. And then finally, years and years of nothing happening, it takes a global pandemic to empty all of it out. And like, I think that's an important example because it just shows that they did so much of the work that they did not see like massive results for a really long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And then they really started connecting their, you know, their resources, their information, their value to the world at hand right now. So, all right, let's get into, like, we talked about tactics of what to do. I like to call what you should stop doing the snooze fest. So like this cat, you know, taking a snooze fest. So like, what are some things we gotta stop doing when it comes to like maybe bad tactics in digital that don't actually work well for acquisition, that maybe we think they work and they suck?
Not the first one that comes to mind is like not segmenting who your message is going to, and like not, and based on that, like not discussing who your audiences are in advance.
Yeah, just like the spray and pray.
Yeah,
just gonna apply to everyone. Right.
Yeah, no, everybody's gonna connect to this message. This is universal.
Yeah. And one of the easiest ways to kind of like think about, even like just starting with simple segmentation, is looking at recency of their last gift. When did they last give? You know, maybe what did they, if you've got different email communications that they can actually opt into, or like interests that they can check off maybe when they're signing up for your email or giving that donation, like what did they check? Doing some basic things. You can also hopefully with your email platform look at like who's opened your email and who hasn't, who's clicked on things, who hasn't. And those can be some simple ways to start thinking about looking at different ways to segment and target people, or like what campaign did they give to last time, you know, versus just like everyone gets this thing.
Yeah, I mean, you know, putting 27 lines of text on a quote graphic, please stop doing that. That's what the caption is for. Like, you know, we need like what you're, when I asked DeRay McKesson what he thought Donald Trump did well he said the way that he drops these sort of fourth grade sort of one-liners that like your aunts and uncles can remember and regurgitate as a like response, as like a fact. It's that like, I understand this, I can relate to this, and we don't do that. We want the entire like complicated story of like how we got here. We started in 2014. It was just a girl with a backpack, and like nobody, no, like, nobody is gonna tell anybody else that when they're talking about who they gave money to at the end of the year. You know, my like circle of friends and other folks who work in progressive orgs, we give donations as gifts, right? Like I gave a donation, like larger donations as like wedding gifts recently to organizations that I thought the bride and groom would feel connected to, and that in their name, they would start to get materials and they would be like, oh shit, I want to give to this now. This is awesome. This is for me. But like, it's because I know these people and I know what their interests are. And so I know that they'd be interested in this. It's like, that is the sort of 3 steps you have to take when you're crafting content, right? It is our job, the digital people's job, the content marketers, the marketing folks' job to, as partners and as resources to our organization, to fight, literally like fight, to instill the best practices that we know are gonna work. And people are literally doing this on their phone. This is not an exaggeration. This is what your phone is designed to do. I'm not gonna stop for that message with 27 lines of text. That's not, now that beautiful block graphic that maybe has one really compelling line of text and makes me stop, and now it's a carousel and I have to stay engaged and kind of swipe through to get the payoff, maybe that works for me. So thinking through, like, there are reasons why these platforms have designed these behaviors, this kind of design thinking, and bake them into the platform. Use it. It is actually like compelling. You could design a blog on your Instagram by saying to folks, we're going to try this out, and it's going to be a 5-slide carousel. That's a blog from our development director on who gave us money and why, or like how we fell short on a goal. And like, there's no fear. I think orgs should stop being afraid of trying new stuff and seeing if it works for their audience too. Because that's also how you bring new people to the party, right? You're doing something different and people are like, huh, I've never seen that before. That's cool. I'm gonna stick around. And that follow on Instagram, on Twitter, can amount to so many other things in the future.
Yeah, totally. And I'll just echo the length of emails. I agree, like a couple of things. Like if it's super long, I'm just like, I'm not reading your book. And then if it's one of those like scammy feeling tactics, like a forward as the subject line, I'm sorry, like, I don't know, maybe those do work, but every time I see them, I'm just like, oh,
yeah, no, they're definitely so cringy.
You didn't forward it to me. You were sending that out to probably 20,000 other people. This is not a friend forwarding me an email.
It's surprising.
So that turns me off.
I think that's right. I think that's right, but I also think it's about knowing your supporter, because sometimes like your supporter will surprise you, right? Like maybe that is the most effective email that you send out because people like being tricked. I don't know, but
I'm saying maybe it works. I don't know. But it just, I don't know, think about it. Like think about stuff like that, and I mean, like as simple as this sounds and maybe even a bit esoteric, just like don't be boring. If you want to cut through the noise, it's exactly right, Kristina, like try new things, be an organization that's willing to go out on a limb and try a new thing on a new platform for the first time, knowing that it might not work, but maybe it does, and you're the first people to do it, and maybe you can do something pretty cool. So I think it's dropping the fear.
And
I had another question coming
yeah,
too.
I just wanted
Go
to
ahead.
add, I just wanted to add that I know that I said earlier that like it's very hard to be first, and that is not true in this instance. That doesn't mean that you don't try.
Yeah, exactly. All right, cool. So let's move along here. I can get this questions box. All right. This is like someone mentioned earlier, what do we do about like in person? It's harder to engage digitally than in person. And we know a lot of organizations that now have a big revenue gap because events are gone. Like what are some of your thoughts on this and what to do to fill the gap?
I mean, we have had virtual events. And we've kind of leaned into like the Zoom webinar sort of like environment, in that we've kind of decided this gives us an opportunity to think about scale in a way that we haven't before, because in an in-person event, you're limited to how many people can I fit into that room, at what budget can I afford to feed them, and do I have to fly folks in, and what kind of programming do I have to design? Is there a DJ? How do we do all of that? Whereas you could have like 750 donors or VIPs come into an event. On a virtual event, you can have up to 1,000 and stream across some of your other channels and play in that way. If there's programming that you think is really important, I think there's a way to look at that and sort of examine whether or not you can chop that into smaller segments of a weekly program, or different, like, Instagram Live with our ED, they give like the sort of keynote or the state of the work, something like that. You had clients, or for us, we would have clients speak about cases. At the ASJ event, we have, a mix of celebrities, a mix of video media, a mix of like interviews and different sort of calls to action. So how do we take that and like leverage it and distribute it across our other channels and provide a diversity of content? So I don't necessarily, I think that you can still figure out ways to create virtual events. I think as long as you have an active community and you can drive attendance and put some resources towards driving attendance, you can still build out an exciting sort of exchange of energy.
Yeah, I do too. I think there's, you can reimagine the event, kind of recognize it's not going to be exactly the same, but get creative and reimagine it and think about like take a step outside of yourself and kind of ask yourself, like, what would make this enticing for our constituents to dial into or to do virtually? Like, what's going to make it actually interesting? And like, so really kind of like ask those hard questions. And then I also think that there's a space to think about other campaigns or programs that maybe have been on the back burner for too long. Like, is there missing revenue that you could go get by like focusing on like a company matching gift program or like something like that, like integrating that in, like figuring out, like getting the tools to collect company matching gifts, or to really like hunker down on your sustained giving program and creating a digital virtual like membership club, or for sustained gifts and things like that, and like hunkering down on some of those other programs that often I hear are on the back burner. And like now you can reinvent and figure out how to get really creative with those things in the virtual space. And then there's a lot of peer-to-peer DIY, like social fundraising things too that you can do. Like we mentioned, just turn it on Facebook and community and Facebook Donate and things like that. So I think there's a lot of different ways to think about this and not just think, oh no, in person is gone, we have to take this event and fit it into a Zoom room. it's got to be more creative than that. And I think you got to think outside the box a little bit more about like other types of campaigns that you might take that event fundraising staff and focus them on sustained giving or something like that. So I think it's about like really reinventing and reimagining things. All right, we are getting close to time. So these slides are gonna be sent out to you. We're gonna send the recording. I wanna wrap up with, and make sure we have time to cover this. I'm gonna kind of scroll ahead into some things, because a lot of these concepts we've kind of talked about, but there's some examples in here of things to do too that we're gonna send out. But I wanna share, Kristina and I have some top picks, right? So when it comes to like quick to launch tools to use and quick to launch like thought leaders to dial into to learn more of this stuff on a regular basis, we both have some things that we love and use. And you're going to get these slides. For graphics, Canva all day, hands down, helps so much when it comes to just creating things that look really good very quickly. Lumen 5 is like a video tool. You can try it out and get it for free. You can literally take your blogs and your written content and have it turn it into little like social videos. KindMaster is a video editing tool that I use on my phone. So if I make a little video, I can cut it really quickly. I'm not a video producer. I'm not that good at it. It's easy to use. And then like think about project tools and, you know, like social sharing schedulers and posts. Meet Edgar is a good one that I like. It makes things pretty easy. It reposts things. And Trello for project management is one of my favorite simple ones. Did I skip yours? Oh, there we go.
I think it was in front of yours.
Order.
Yeah, it's okay.
I think it's out of order.
It's all good.
Yeah, it's under there. We're gonna make sure it's sent out. Couple of top thought leaders. Okay, Seth Godin, got to mention the Purple Cow. Get that book. It's gonna help you think about things differently when you really think about innovation. And right now we got to think about innovation. These are great thought leaders, great places for free content, great books that I have found useful. All right, Kristina, let's get into yours.
Yeah, so Noah Kagan, he's very famously known as one of the original employees at like Facebook and Mint. He makes a bunch of tools, but okdork.com is like his marketing blog, and he's just really great. Avinash Kushik has been the digital marketing guy at Google forever, and Occam's Razor and a bunch of other blogs that he runs are like just go-tos for me. Ann Handley is like a legend in the space. Her newsletter, Total Anarchy, is like one of my favorites. And then Smashing Magazine is like a weekly newsletter that goes out that's specific to web design developer folks, thinking about different kinds of accessibility needs and different kinds of tools that are out in the market for us.
Awesome. Yeah, and I second Noah Kagan. Yeah, when you sent me through to add him to the list, I was like, yeah, he's good stuff. All right. And I guess somehow I dropped your tools. We're gonna make sure it gets in, because you had a handful of other tools that were good. I'm gonna just stop and say thank you. Thank you, Kristina, for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom and your ideas and your candor. And thanks to everyone who dialed in today and joined us. We hope this was really helpful. We'll be sending out the recording and the slides. And
yeah,
hope you have a good day.
If you have any other questions, please find me on LinkedIn. Say hello. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you both. And I hope that you reach out to Taylor if you have questions about how Firefly can help you.
Yeah. And find me on LinkedIn. I'm super active there as well. So stay in touch. I'll be sending out the recording and the slides, and hope you have a great day, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Bye. How do you think it went?